before the day fully awakens, before the sun stretches its light across the sky and the world begins its demands, we come quietly to God just as we are, not polished, not prepared, not pretending. We arrive at the morning unmasked and unarmored, carrying the weight of another night survived. We do not come announcing strengths, we come acknowledging fatigue. We step into the dawn barefoot in spirit, aware of the ache in our souls and the heaviness in our hearts. This is the posture of honest surrender. We come carrying what the night left behind, worries that followed us into sleep, thoughts that refused to rest, questions with no answers yet, grief that sits quietly but heavily in the chest, fear about what today might bring, and anxiety about what tomorrow might demand. We bring the visible burdens, the responsibilities, the pressures, the expectations, and we also bring the hidden ones, the silent fears we smile through, the private battles no one sees, the doubts we rarely admit out loud. Nothing is filtered, nothing is minimized, everything is welcome here. This morning is not about offering God impressive words or perfected faith. It is not about reciting memorized lines or presenting ourselves as composed and unshaken. This is not a performance. This is a confession. This is a breath released from deep within the ribs, an honest prayer that says, Lord, I am tired. I cannot carry all of this anymore. There is no rush in this prayer, no need to impress heaven, only the courage to tell the truth. In this sacred beginning, we ask not for a life without storms, but for peace within them, a peace that does not depend on answers arriving quickly or circumstances suddenly improving, a peace that settles even while the wind still howls. We ask for a calm that can exist alongside uncertainty, a steadiness that holds us when clarity has not yet come. This is the peace that does not silence the storm, but steadies the soul standing inside it. Choosing surrender in the morning is a quiet act of bravery. It means refusing to struggle in silence. It means admitting that we were never meant to carry everything alone. Surrender says, I release what I cannot control. It says, I trust you with what weighs me down. It is not giving up. It is handing over. It is loosening clenched fists and opening tired hands. It is laying our burdens before God without apology and without shame. As we surrender, something gentle begins to happen. Peace does not rush in loudly. It does not force its way through the door. It settles softly, like morning mist across an open field. Quiet, light, yet impossible to walk through unchanged. It touches the anxious thoughts, the restless heart, the exhausted spirit, and it begins to soothe what the night disturbed. This peace does not erase reality. It reshapes how we stand within it. This moment grounds us. It reminds us that we are safe enough to be honest, held enough to be real. There is intimacy, here God meeting us not in our strength, but in our truth. There is permission here to feel, to admit, to release. We are not judged for our worries. We are not rejected for our fear. We are received. And so, as the morning unfolds, we rise not because everything is solved, but because we are surrendered. We step into the day lighter, not because life has become easier, but because we are no longer carrying it alone. This is the beginning of honest surrender, and it is here, in this quiet meeting with God, that peace, honesty before God is not weakness. It is worship in its purest form. It is the moment we stop editing our prayers and start telling the truth. For too long, many have believed that faith requires composure, that devotion demands certainty, and that strength is proven by silence. But heaven is not moved by performance. Heaven responds to truth. When we come to God honestly, we are not diminishing our faith, we are activating it. Honesty does not mean the absence of belief. It means the presence of trust. It takes courage to admit fear while still choosing God. It takes humility to confess worry while refusing to let worry rule the heart. This is not a collapse of faith. It is an invitation into deeper faith. When we tell God what hurts, what confuses us, and what exhausts us, we are not pushing God away, we are drawing closer. Truth opens a door that pretense keeps locked. God has never required rehearsed prayers or polished language. He does not ask us to arrive composed, confident, and spiritually impressive. He asks us to arrive real. The divine ear leans closer to a trembling whisper than to a flawless speech. God prefers the unfiltered heart over the well-arranged sentence. The real prayer, spoken through tears, or silence or shaky breath, carries more weight in heaven than words dressed in certainty but emptied of truth. Acknowledging worry is part of holy honesty, but enthroning it is not. There is a difference between admitting fear and allowing fear to govern the soul. Honest worship names the anxiety without giving it authority. It says, I feel this, but it does not define me. It says, this worry exists, but it will not sit on the throne of my heart. In honesty, we expose worry to the light. and in the light, its power begins to loosen. Confession is not about self-condemnation, it is about release. When we confess what weighs us down, we are not confessing defeat, we are confessing need. And need is not shameful in the presence of God. Need is the very place where grace begins to move. What is hidden, what is concealed grows heavier, but what is spoken becomes reachable. Confession turns pain into prayer, and struggle into surrender. God does not recoil from our questions, our doubts, or our unfinished faith. He does not withdraw when we admit that we are tired or afraid. Instead, He meets us there. Heaven is not offended by honesty, it is opened by it. The moment we stop pretending, healing begins. The moment we bring what is broken into the light, restoration becomes possible. There is no healing in secrecy. Wounds that remain hidden cannot be tended. Pain that is never acknowledged cannot be soothed. Honest worship drags the truth into God's presence and says, "Here is what I cannot fix. Here is what I do not understand. Here is what I need you to hold." And God responds, not with judgment, but with mercy. Truth is the currency God responds to. Not perfection, not polished faith, not spiritual bravado. Truth. When we bring our real selves before God, we are offering the most sacred sacrifice we have. We are saying, "I trust you with who I actually am, not who I pretend to be." That trust invites divine intervention. In this way, honesty becomes holy ground. It dismantles shame. It silences fear's false authority. It creates space for peace to enter. Faith does not require us to hide our humanity. It invites us to bring it fully into God's presence. And in that brave act of truth-telling, heaven listens, grace flows, and healing begins. Surrender is the sacred turning point where honesty becomes action. After confession comes release. After naming the weight, comes the decision to stop carrying it. Surrender is not collapse, resignation, or defeat. It is spiritual intelligence. It is the wisdom of recognizing that some burdens were never meant for human shoulders. No matter how strong or disciplined or faithful we try to be, to surrender is to loosen the grip of control. Control promises safety but delivers exhaustion. It convinces us that if we think harder, plan longer, worry deeper, we can secure outcomes that were never ours to manage. Surrender interrupts that illusion. It says, "I release the need to determine how this ends." It is not indifference. It is trust. It is choosing to believe that God's oversight is more reliable than our anxiety. One of the heaviest weights we carry is tomorrow. We rehearse future pain as if preparation will protect us. We anticipate loss, failure, disappointment, and uncertainty, paying emotional taxes long before the bill is due. Surrender refuses this premature burden. It reminds the soul that tomorrow has not arrived yet, and that when it does, God will already be there. Carrying tomorrow's pain today only multiplies sorrow and steals strength meant for the present moment. Surrender is not retreat, it is strategy. Retreat abandons the field. Surrender hands the battle to the one who can win it. It is not stepping back from responsibility but stepping into divine partnership. When we surrender, we are not walking away from life, we are choosing not to walk through it alone. This is not weakness, it is alignment. It is placing our limited endurance under unlimited strength. Human endurance has a breaking point. No matter how resilient, disciplined, or determined we are, fatigue eventually arrives. Surrender recognizes this limit without shame. It does not demand constant self-sufficiency. Instead, it trusts that God's strength does not deplete. Where human resolve phrase, divine power remains steady. Surrender says, "I will walk, but you will carry the weight." There is relief in releasing outcomes. When we surrender results, we free ourselves from the pressure of perfection. We stop measuring our worth by what we can control or predict. We allow God to shape the process while we remain faithful in the step directly in front of us. Surrender shifts our posture from striving to abiding, from forcing to trusting, from exhausting effort to sustainable faith. This is the hinge between exhaustion and renewal. Holding tight drains the soul. Letting go creates space for breath. Surrender does not remove challenges, but it changes how they are carried. What once crushed now rests in God's hands. What once overwhelmed now becomes shared. Renewal begins not when life becomes lighter, but when the load is redistributed. Surrender is an act of courage. It requires humility to admit, "This is too heavy for me." But in that admission, strength is reborn. Because surrender does not end in emptiness, ends in being held. God does not ask us to be strong enough to carry everything. He asks us to be trusting enough to give it to Him. When we surrender what was never ours to carry, we rise different, not because the road is shorter, but because we are no longer walking bent beneath unnecessary weight. Surrender becomes the doorway through which renewal enters. And on the other side of that doorway, Strength is restored not from within ourselves, but from God who never grows weary. Peace from God is not a fragile emotion, and it is not contingent upon the quietness of our circumstances. It is not a fleeting feeling that comes and goes with the rise and fall of life's events. True peace is authoritative, internal, and unshakable. It is the presence of God made tangible in the soul, a deep-rooted calm that persists even when the storms of life rage around us. This is the kind of peace that does not wait for resolution or clarity. It exists independently of the outcomes we hope for, or the answers we long to see. Many believe peace arrives only when troubles depart, when uncertainty is removed, or when anxiety no longer knocks. But God's peace does not function according to human logic. It comes before answers, before problems are solved, and often before we feel ready to receive it. It settles into the heart, claiming space even in the midst of unanswered questions, and it quietly governs our inner world. This peace is not passive. It is active, asserting authority over fear, commanding calm over chaos, and restraining the panic that seeks to dominate our minds. Peace is not the absence of difficulty. Life remains unpredictable. Storms still batter our shores, and confusion often clouds our vision. But peace transforms how we engage with the storm. It does not erase tension or remove responsibility. Instead, it shifts the perspective of the soul, teaching us to stand firm while life continues to swirl. It allows us to walk through challenges without being consumed by them. In the same way that a lighthouse guides ships in violent seas, God's peace steadies the heart amid turbulence. This peace builds a foundation, not just a momentary sensation. Emotions are fleeting and unreliable, but the peace of God becomes structural within the soul. It creates a steady platform upon which we can navigate uncertainty and sustain faith. When anxiety arises or fear threatens to dominate, this internal peace does not waver because it is rooted in the unchanging character of God. It is deeper than circumstance, stronger than worry, and broader than human comprehension. Receiving God's peace requires trust and surrender. It cannot be forced, engineered, or manufactured by human effort alone. We must stop trying to control outcomes, stop demanding immediate solutions, and stop expecting life to conform to our time. Peace enters when we relinquish the illusion of control and allow God's presence to anchor us. It is the assurance that, no matter what unfolds, we are held by a power greater than ourselves, a guidance beyond our understanding, and a love that is unwavering. When we experience God's peace, it changes how we live from the inside out. Our thoughts slow, our hearts steady, and our decisions are guided less by fear and more by clarity rooted in trust. Peace teaches patience, restores perspective, and grants strength to endure. It is not dependent on the absence of storms, but on the presence of the one who is higher than them. Even when life is messy, confusing, or painful, peace declares, "You are not alone. You are not without help. You are not abandoned." Ultimately, peace is proof of God's presence, not evidence that life is perfect. It is a witness to His sovereignty, and a sign that our hearts are under divine care. It does not demand that the world change to suit us. It simply reshapes how we stand within it. When we receive peace inside the storm, we rise, anchored, steady, and confident, not because the storm has ceased, but because God has entered the storm with us. This is the peace that endures, governs, and sustains. It is not fragile, fleeting, or dependent on circumstance. It is the foundation of a soul resting fully in God. Peace is meant to move from the heart into every step we take. It begins internally, with surrendered burdens and a steady trust in God, but it does not remain hidden. True peace manifests outwardly. It becomes the language we speak, the posture we carry, and the testimony we leave in the spaces we enter. Walking through the day as a witness of peace is not about ignoring reality or pretending life is easier than it is. It is about allowing the calm that God has planted within to shape how we move, how we respond, and how we engage with the world around us. When peace leads, it transforms thought patterns. Anxiety and fear no longer dictate every mental rehearsal or imagined scenario. Decisions are made not from panic or compulsion but from clarity anchored in trust. Even when challenges arise, the mind, guided by God's peace, remains steady. Listening first before reacting, weighing truth before echoing worry, peace becomes the internal governor, slowing frantic racing thoughts, redirecting attention away from fear, and rooting the soul in faith instead. Peace also shapes posture. Shoulders release tension, hands unclench, breath deepens. Our very bodies carry the evidence of surrender. When we walk through the day lighter, not because burdens vanish, but because they have been placed in God's hands, our presence communicates calm to those around us. People sense the difference before words are even spoken. A soul carried by peace radiates reassurance and stability. Even amid chaos, speech is another channel for peace. Our words reflect what is internal. When we have surrendered worry and received God's calm, our conversations, encouragements, and responses mirror that serenity. We no longer amplify panic in others or participate in the rapid-fire spread of fear. Instead, our voice becomes a witness, declaring by example that calm is possible, that trust is viable, and that faith can coexist with challenge. This is the subtle power of peace. It teaches, corrects, and comforts without confrontation. Refusing to let worry reclaim authority is an intentional practice. Peace must be reinforced daily, moment by moment. When doubts arise, we return them to God. When fear whispers its claims, we reaffirm surrender. This vigilance is not burdening, it is liberating. We are no longer enslaved to the unrelenting demands of anxiety because we have acknowledged our limits and chosen God's presence over perpetual struggle. Each time we refuse to let worry speak louder than peace, we train our hearts to carry weight, differently steady, secure, and aligned with divine strength. Walking through the day as a witness of peace also becomes worship. Our calm is an offering. Our measured steps, our gentle words, our unhurried breath all testify to a God who carries what we cannot. By living peace in action, we turn prayer into practice and devotion into demonstration. Others see that peace is attainable not through perfection, but through surrender, trust, and divine companionship. Ultimately, rising into the day with peace means we walk lighter not because the load disappears, but because we no longer bear it alone. God carries what we cannot. We remain active participants, taking steps of faith, speaking words of truth, and living with intentional calm. This outward embodiment of inward surrender seals the circle of prayer. We give, we trust, we receive, and we reflect. Peace becomes our language, our posture, our witness, and our worship in every thought, step, and word. We declare, life is challenging, uncertainty exists, but God's presence is steady, His strength sufficient, and His peace unwavering. By walking through the day anchored in this truth, we become living proof that calm is not a fantasy, is a gift, a practice, and a testimony of surrender. Peace is not simply a feeling we hope to find, it is the life we demonstrate, a quiet proclamation that the God who holds all things also holds us.